Okay, so we're going to be interviewing my dad. I'm Connor Toomey, that's Cooper Sanquini, and we're interviewing my dad on his job at National Consumer Panel. My dad, John Toomey.
Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you, Connor. Thank you, Cooper. Um, should I provide some background, some of what I do, what National Consumer Panel is, what my role there is?
Yeah, just basically, yeah, give us a little rundown.
Okay, so I'm the CEO and COO of National Consumer Panel, and National Consumer Panel is a joint venture between the number one and number two market research companies in the US. So Nielsen, or now as they're called Nielsen IQ, and IRI, which stands for Information Resources Inc. We provide panel services and data services to both Nielsen and IRI, and we actually have 100,000+ people in the United States that use a mobile app that we've developed, and people download it on their Apple phone or their Android phone, and they scan the barcodes of all the products that they purchase. That data automatically gets transmitted back to us, so we know who's purchasing what else they're purchasing in the basket at the same time, where they're buying it, how much they've paid for the product, how they paid for it, credit card, cash, etc. So it's very important information for retailers, manufacturers to know who their shoppers are, who's not shopping at their store, because if you're retailer A, and you want to know who's shopping at Wegmans and not your store, you could come to us and we could tell you, here's what your shoppers are buying at your store. Likely you know that already because of frequent shopper data that you might have on a particular customer. But what you don't know is what your customers are not buying at your store, what they're buying at your competitor down the street. We also perform hundreds of unique surveys per year with millions of interviews. So we're asking people, we're following up on that data that they provide to us. We will ask them survey questions. So for example, if you're a Procter and Gamble and you want to know more information about people that are purchasing your newest Tide scent, we can send surveys out to people who we know purchased your newest Tide product with a new fresh scent and ask them whatever questions you'd like to know about their experience. So that's pretty much what NCP does. And as I mentioned, I'm the CEO and COO of NCP.
All right, so we have a little list of questions that we kind of want to run through. And first question we have is how do you motivate your subordinates and employees?
Well, these days it's a lot different than it was just a couple of years ago. Pre-pandemic had a whole different, unique set of ways that we used to motivate our employees. Post-pandemic, it's very different. Now employees want flexibility. They want to be able to work remotely. They want a hybrid approach where some days they're in the office, other days they're not in the office. But one thing has been very consistent, whether it's pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, was the recognition. So recognizing people for their accomplishments, their contributions to the organization, um, being honest with folks, telling them where their strengths are and where they could use some improvement. It's really very important to show people and to acknowledge people's successes, but also work with them on areas where they may need a bit more encouragement. Um, One of the things that we're very proud of at NCP is, and as a matter of fact, this Wednesday, myself and seven other of my executive team are going to Albany to accept an award as one of the best companies to work for in New York State. And this will be the 8th year in a row that we've been recognized by SHRM, which is the Society for Human Resource Management, as one of the best companies. It's a very involved process, and they actually survey our employees, ask probably 60 or so questions, everything from benefits to compensation to flexibility, to do you believe in the mission of the company? Would you have a friend? Would you recommend working at NCP to a friend? Whole series of questions. And we're competing against a whole slew of New York-based companies. And we're very proud that we've won, and this year is the 8th year. That survey itself, along with other employee satisfaction surveys that we conduct throughout the year, really helps us look into the heads of our employees and understand what's important to them. It also provides an anonymous forum to our associates so they can tell us what's working and what's not working. And we share those results back with our employees. So we acknowledge where we need to focus, just like we provide constructive feedback for our employees. Um, and then we work on that. We come up with a plan together, we work on that, and then we reassess. We'll ask employees again anonymously how we're doing, and they'll let us know. Throughout the whole process, we have an open door policy where um, employees can come to me, they can come to any of my executive team, to HR, and provide us with open and honest feedback. And we, in turn, are very open, honest, and transparent with our associates. They understand what our corporate mission is. They understand how they fit into their role fits into our success. So all of that combines to motivate our employees. And I'm very proud to say that given the great resignation that's happening right now, we have only lost 1 or 2 employees since the pandemic actually began. So our employees like what they're doing, they like what we're doing, they're motivated, and a motivated employee really helps us accomplish our mission.
Wow. I would just like to start off by saying congratulations on those awards for being the one of the most interesting companies to work at for employees and being a very good work ethic for employees as well. So, from what you said before, how after this whole pandemic has kind of changed the entire workplace, how would you describe what makes you a good leader in the new workplace that we all live in now after COVID?
Yeah, it's although it has changed at the tactical level, at the strategic level, it really hasn't changed. And what I would say is I try to lead by example. So I don't ask any of my employees, any of my associates do anything that I wouldn't be willing to do, right? So, and they know, hey, if he's willing to do it, it creates this kind of bond that we're all in this together, that we're part of a team. Um, so that goes a really long way. And one of the really important things that I mentioned, how to motivate, you know, especially during the pandemic and now, you really have to put yourself in the shoes of your employees and understand that maybe the healthcare, I'm sorry, the childcare that they had arranged in the past, maybe that all fell apart during the pandemic and they're really in a different place and they need more flexibility. So we really try to create an environment where people feel part of a team, not an us versus them type of situation. So, one of the things that I really try to do is myself and my whole management team, we encourage, and I encourage myself to really be very adaptable to change. We had a whole lot of change with the pandemic. It really sped things up dramatically. I'm sure change will continue forever, but we want to, as good leaders in the organization, we want to adapt to change, whether it's environmental, whether it's people change. And then one of the really important things that if you don't do it right can really undermine you as a leader is you have to be committed to equality and equity in your organization. You get that wrong, no matter what else you're doing that could be perfect, your credibility is out the window. So those are some of the key things that I continue to challenge myself on, and we as an organization challenge each other so we can grow together and be a better group of leaders.
All right, the next question I have, it's more marketing related, is what has been the biggest problem you faced in your professional career while in marketing specifically?
Hmm. Um, one of the things that we do, one of our core deliverables is um, we ask volunteers, if you will, that we call them panelists, panel members across the US. We also do this in Canada as well. We ask them to become panel members and to provide that scanning information that I mentioned earlier, where the panel members will provide us with the barcodes and prices and locations of where they're buying things and who was with them when they shopped and all kinds of information. So when I started, even when NCP started 12 or so years ago, it was significantly easier to acquire these volunteers. Now they do earn points that they can redeem for gift cards and things like that, but essentially they're doing us a service. They're doing us a favor of providing all of this information to us. It has become incredibly and increasingly difficult now to replace those panel members when they leave. People are just not volunteering. They're not willing to provide that level of service that is essential to our business. We have 100 and let's say 125,000 people that represent all walks of life, that represents all the demographics and geographics in the U.S. and Canada. And if people simply aren't willing to sign up for us, our product is going to suffer. That if right now, I would say that's my biggest challenge in the industry, and it's not just NCP. It's all market research panel companies are experiencing the same phenomena, and it's not even limited to North America. I work with folks around the globe that run panels in Australia, UK, France, all over, and everyone is experiencing similar problems. Which, without that raw material, without those panel members providing that information, this industry is really going to struggle in the future. So, is that the biggest challenge of my career? I don't know, but right now it's the biggest challenge of the moment, and it's each year it becomes more challenging. So that's something we're very, very focused on.
Huh. So, in your marketing career, what would you consider to be the most important abilities in order to be successful in that field?
Well, it's very much. Many of them are very similar to just how are you a good manager, a good leader. They really overlap. We really have to be adaptable to change, anticipate change, stay up with the trends because not that long ago, I know you guys may not remember a time before the internet, but not that long ago, when we needed information from our panel members, we actually had to send them paper surveys in the mail, and the panel members would take out a pen or a pencil and select their answers by bubbling, filling in the bubbles next to the responses. That would come back to us, and then we'd run it through OCR machines that would read those filled in bubbles and provide us the data. Never in a million years did we imagine back then that there would be something called the internet, and we could do all of that work, all that surveying work over on someone's handheld device. Um, so you really have to be out there looking at what trends are next. So it used to be paper surveys and those annoying telephone calls that, during dinner time when people are asking you, "Do you have time for a short survey?" And then we used to do that, and we completely moved away from that. And now everything we do is on the internet, right? It's all phone based or laptop based or whatever. So it really is the ability to look forward, um, or as the saying is, you can't not see the forest because of the trees. You have to really look beyond what you're doing today and think strategically about what's coming tomorrow. Another key is really surrounding yourself with really, really bright people. And I know that's a challenge for some people and some Some managers, because they're concerned about their own job security, they think, well, if I hire this really smart person that's going to help grow my company and lead us forward, then maybe they'll take my job and I won't be needed any longer. Um, we don't act that way. We look for the best and the brightest with the newest ideas to really lead us forward. Because in order for any company, now, my company happens to be a market research company, to really survive and exist, especially nowadays with the industry, there's mergers, acquisitions occurring uh, all the time. So for example, last week, one of my owners, Information Resource, uh, announced that they're merging with another company called the MPD Group. They were both independent companies. Both are privately held companies, and they announced they're merging. So always keeping an eye out for what's happening, looking for opportunities to work with other companies, to leverage smart people, and just be flexible in this marketplace.
Kind of on a similar note, can you describe a time when you or one of your employees or coworkers struggled with motivation at work, and like how did you correct that kind of downward slope for them or for you?
Yeah, yeah, and I'm going to give you an example that's very contemporary. And I think a lot of people struggled with early COVID lockdowns. Um, we back in March of 2020, what Governor Cuomo told us was give us 14 days to flatten the curve, and everyone thought, okay, we're in 14 days, in 2 weeks, we're going to be back to work. So we shut down. I think it was on the 13th of March, and we went. Everyone went remote for the plan was 2 weeks. And we didn't go back to the office for a year and a half after that. And people really, really struggled. And I'll admit I was one of them. I never liked working remotely, never liked working from home. Very, very rarely did I ever work from home. I was in the office 5 days a week. So I personally really struggled with staying motivated and adapting to this rapid change where we went from 5 days a week to 0 days a week. We went from um, chatting with people as you're walking through the hallways, seeing, your coworkers, having that camaraderie and all of that. You went from that to being sitting at your kitchen table while your kids who were out of school you were trying to entertain your kids or at least keep them, from ripping your house to shreds. It was a very trying time for, I know, a number of my employees really struggled with that. It took a real long time for that situation for them to reach, a peace with that situation. And we had we have services for folks like that. We have through our benefits program, it's the employee assistance program where you can speak to professionals that can help you through that kind of change. Um, and so that's part of what the benefits that we offer our employees. And I know several folks actually um, took advantage of those programs just to help just deal and stay motivated. It's very challenging. Now, oddly enough, here we are, and we went back 3 days a week to work. I don't know, months and months ago, but now those same people that really adjusted very slowly to a remote work environment, the very same people are now saying, "Well, I can I work remotely?" They've come full circle, right? Or did a 180, whatever that saying is, where they now want more time away from the office, or they don't want to come back at all. So people are resilient. A lot of folks struggle through this and struggle with their personal motivation on a number of levels, not just work motivation, but just getting out of bed and dealing with the monotony of not leaving your house and turning on the news and hearing the world was going to end every day. And they've come out the other end, and their expectations have changed. So, and they'll change again. So you see people now, as new variants are coming out, people are, in large part, are just kind of brushing them aside, saying, okay, now we'll get through this next one. So that was a really challenging time for a lot of people to stay motivated personally, and for us to help them. And we did a number of things. We used, Zoom very often. We had virtual scavenger hunts where we did it all on the computer. We had virtual water cooler time where people could just go online and chat with each other as if they were, standing by the proverbial water cooler at work, sharing stories about what they did on the weekends. We transformed our in-person events in large part to online events where, we used to have employees, for example, if we would encourage them to come in on Halloween in costume, and they couldn't do that because we weren't in the office, but we would have an online event where people would turn their cameras on and they'd be dressed, up for Halloween, and all kinds of events like that we did just to try to keep people engaged and keep them motivated.
It's great. So, back from what you said about struggling with trying to keep some motivation aspects, was there ever a time where you yourself had struggled to keep a marketing relationship between a manager that you have or even a client that you needed?
Yeah, it's a great question. And um, I was very concerned about that, frankly, especially on the client side, um, because part of my job and part of my management team's job and my client service folks' job they would go and press the flesh. They would go and have FaceTime with the clients, and they take them out to lunch and do all kinds of things with them and get to know them, and all of that shut down immediately. So I was very concerned that, whoa, is this going to be uh, uh, um, uh, the end of business as we know it? um, our clients just going to not need our services any longer? So there was the whole pandemic piece, but what we do is really focused on understanding what people buy. And what we found at the beginning of in that March, April timeframe of 2020 is that information was even more important to our clients, because you might remember the shelves were empty. There were no paper products, no pasta, and that people were paying an arm and a leg for items. They were trying to find disinfectant products all over the place. Retailers, manufacturers needed to know that information more than ever, because it was such a dramatic change in the marketplace that they had no way to benchmark it. That had never happened before, and they really needed to understand a completely new situation. They've never seen consumer behavior change so rapidly, not only because people were not willing to go out of their house and go shopping, but because the shelves were empty. So we became really, really important. And we had our clients ringing our phones, our virtual phones, of course, because we were in the office, off the hook. They really wanted this information. That for us as a company really was a motivation, because I'm sure everyone and everyone that probably, and you can all think of friends and family members and relatives, they were losing their jobs, right? Stores were closing, restaurants were closing, uh, every place was shutting down, and it was long term. So lots of people were losing their jobs. Unemployment went through the roof. But for my team and my company, we actually grew, um, in terms of revenue, in terms of work, and all of that stuff during this time, which really motivated my team, and they felt really great about being part of a company that was growing. And just from a statistical perspective, or I'll throw some numbers out there. Um, when we learned that we were going to be working remotely long term, we only furloughed 2 people, and out of the whole company, and we only furloughed those people is because one person did not have internet access at home, and they couldn't work remotely, and the other person was our office manager slash mailroom person, and there was no office to manage, and there was no mail going to the mailroom. So we really had no options but to furlough those folks. After I think we waited about 2 months to furlough them. But everyone else we kept on, and there was never a time where anyone thought, "Oh boy, am I going to lose my job?" So we actually, like I said, we actually grew during those crazy months.
And the last question we have is whether it's on like a personal level or more of a business level, do you have a biggest like mistake that you'd say you've made in your professional career? Like whether it's like a personality like you as yourself or like maybe a relationship with someone or just a decision that you've made or something like that.
Um, yeah, I don't know if this is the biggest one because I continue to outdo myself from week to week on biggest mistakes, but I can tell you one that I certainly made. I was working at a company, another market research company, and um, I really didn't. I, I didn't. I wasn't really looking for a job. I was happy enough where I was. I knew I wasn't going to retire from that company, but I wasn't really looking. And I allowed someone to talk me into going for an interview at this other company. Went on an interview, and I allowed myself to be talked into taking that job and leaving the first company. And in hindsight, which only took about a month or so for me to understand, I knew it was a mistake, and I really knew it was a mistake from the day I took the job. But it was more money, and it was, you know, I don't know if they were feeding my ego or what it was, and I actually um, quit, resigned from my first job, gave notice and all that stuff, started at this other company. And then within a month, I was like, this is the biggest mistake of my life. And I actually wound up calling the CEO of my first company, and saying, hey, I made a mistake, kind of went back with my tail between my legs and love to come back. They were happy to have me. I resigned from that company that I should never have taken that job in the first place. In the long run, no harm, no foul. It really didn't hurt my career at all, I don't think. But at the time, I like I said, I allowed myself to be talked into something that I knew wasn't right. So in the end, everything seemed to work out just fine. But it was a miserable month or so where, I was working at the second company and trying to figure out what should I do. And so that was one that's certainly on my list of big mistakes.
All right, that's all we have. We took plenty of your time. I don't even know if it was supposed to be this long, but thanks, Dad, and
Yeah, thank you very much.
well, I'll see you soon.
Okay, thanks, guys.